In the bustling city of Lagos, Nigeria, there was a rich and powerful woman named Madam Comfort. She lived in Aja, a fast-growing area known for its beautiful houses and big businesses. Madam Comfort was not just an ordinary rich woman. She was a woman of great influence and respect. She owned many businesses across Lagos, making her one of the most successful women in the city. Among her businesses was a prestigious British international school, where children from wealthy and influential families studied. The school was known for its high standards, excellent teachers, and modern facilities. Parents paid a lot of money to enroll their children there, and many people admired Madam Comfort for building such a top-class institution. Apart from the school, Madam Comfort also had several other businesses, including real estate investments, a chain of supermarkets, and a high-end fashion boutique that sold the latest designer clothes. She was always busy, moving from one business meeting to another, making sure everything was running smoothly. Her wealth was visible in everything she did. She lived in a grand mansion with tall gates, a beautiful garden, and expensive cars parked in her driveway. She wore the finest clothes, gold jewelry, and designer handbags. People respected her not just for her money but for her intelligence and business skills. Many young women looked up to her and dreamed of becoming as successful as she was. Despite her busy schedule, Madam Comfort was also known for helping people. She donated money to orphanages, supported women who wanted to start businesses, and gave scholarships to intelligent but poor students who could not afford school fees. Her kindness and generosity made her even more popular in Lagos. Madam Comfort was truly a woman of substance, rich, powerful, and respected by all. However, despite all her success, Madam Comfort was married to an average man named Paul. He was not as rich as she was, but he was a hardworking and responsible man. Paul had always been supportive of his wife's dreams and stood by her from the very beginning. Even when she started her first business, he encouraged her and helped her in any way he could. Paul worked as a principal in his wife's school and earned a decent salary, but compared to his wife's great wealth, his income seemed small. This difference in their financial status often created problems in their marriage. While Paul was a humble and simple man, Madam Comfort had grown used to luxury and power. Over time, she started to see herself as more important than her husband. She often disrespected Paul, talking to him in a rude manner, especially in front of people. Whenever they had arguments, she would remind him that she was the one bringing in the most money. She made most of the major decisions in the house without consulting him, and even when he gave his opinion, she would ignore him as if his words did not matter. Sometimes, when Paul tried to correct her or give her advice, she would get angry and say things that hurt him. She felt that because she was richer, she had more authority in their home. This often led to heated arguments, and Paul would sometimes feel frustrated and unappreciated. Despite all these challenges, Paul remained patient. He loved his wife and did not want their marriage to fall apart. He believed in respect and family values, so he tried his best to tolerate her behavior. However, deep inside, he wished Madam Comfort would see him as her husband and not as someone beneath her just because of money. Their marriage was a constant battle between love and pride, with money standing in the middle as the biggest problem. The couple has two lovely daughters, whom Mr. Paul is so proud of and enjoys their company. Paul is a caring and devoted father who treats all his children with equal love and attention. He plays with them, provides for them, and teaches them important life lessons. To him, having daughters is a great blessing, and he never wishes for anything more. However, Madam Comfort felt differently. Even though she loved her daughters, she secretly longed for a male child. In her heart, she believed that having a son would make her life complete. She admired families with sons and often wished she had one too. For many years, she prayed, fasted, and hoped that God would bless her with a baby boy. She visited different churches and even sought advice from spiritual leaders, asking them to pray for her. Her desire for a son grew stronger with time, and it became something she thought about every day. She often imagined what it would feel like to have a son, someone to carry on the family name, someone she could raise to be strong and successful. She even began to treat her daughters differently, paying more attention to the idea of having a son than appreciating the children she already had. After many years of waiting in love, she ignored all of Paul's warnings, convinced that Emanuel would eventually change on his own. But as time went on, things only got worse. Emanuel's behavior became more reckless, and his love for money and pleasure grew stronger. One day, Emanuel made a terrible mistake. He got a young lady pregnant. The girl was from a humble background and had no one to defend her. When she told Emanuel about the pregnancy, he was shocked and didn't know what to do. He was not ready to be a father and had no plans of taking responsibility for the child. Without thinking twice, he went straight to his mother and told her everything. He expected her to be angry or at least scold him for his actions, but Madam Comfort did the exact opposite. Instead of holding him accountable, she immediately took control of the situation. She believed that her son was too young to have such a burden and that the pregnancy would ruin his future. She called the young girl and, without showing any sympathy, ordered her to terminate the pregnancy. The girl was scared and confused, but she had no power to resist. Madam Comfort used her influence and money to make sure everything was done secretly. She didn't care about how the girl felt or what it meant to end the pregnancy. She only cared about protecting her son's reputation. After everything was over, Emanuel felt no guilt or regret. Instead, he became even more confident in his bad behavior. His mother had saved him from trouble once again, just like she always did. This made him believe that no matter what he did, there would never be consequences. His sense of entitlement grew stronger. He became more reckless, drinking more, partying harder, and spending money without control. He treated people poorly, knowing that his mother would always defend him. He no longer respected his father at all and barely listened to anyone. Paul saw what was happening and felt deep pain in his heart. He knew that his son was heading down a dangerous path, but no matter how much he tried to warn his wife, she refused to change. Madam Comfort had created a monster, and soon, the consequences of her actions would come knocking. There were times when Madam Comfort tried to control Emanuel's spending. She knew he was wasting money on drinking, partying, and reckless activities, so she decided to set some limits. But Emanuel was not the kind of person who accepted no for an answer. Whenever his mother refused to give him money, he would become angry and throw terrible tantrums, especially in her office at the school. He didn't care who was watching, teachers, students, or even other school staff. He would push chairs, knock things over, and scatter papers all over her desk. Sometimes, he would shout at his mother, calling her unfair and accusing her of not loving him. The scene was always embarrassing. Teachers would stand at a distance, shaking their heads in disbelief, while students whispered among themselves, shocked at how a grown man could behave like a spoiled child. Some staff members felt sorry for Madam Comfort, while others believed she was the one who had created this problem by spoiling him too much. Each time Emanuel caused a scene, Madam Comfort would try to calm him down, but he never listened. He would continue his tantrum until she had no choice but to give him the money. Even when she explained that the funds were meant for important school projects, Emanuel didn't care. All he wanted was to get his way. Despite knowing that her son was destroying himself, Madam Comfort always gave in to his demands. She was afraid of seeing him angry and unhappy. She convinced herself that if she didn't give him the money, he might hate her or do something worse. So, no matter how important the money was for the school, she always gave it to him in the end. And each time she did, Emanuel became more confident that he could do anything he wanted without consequences. Years of this toxic pattern began to affect Madam Comfort's health. The constant stress of dealing with Emanuel's reckless behavior wore her down, both physically and emotionally. She worried all the time about his drinking, his late nights, his demands for money, and his complete lack of responsibility. At first, she ignored the signs. She often felt tired, had frequent headaches, and sometimes found it hard to sleep. But she pushed herself to keep going, believing she had to do everything for her son. Over time, the stress became too much for her body to handle, and she developed high blood pressure. She managed it for years, taking medication and trying to control it, but the problem never truly went away. Each time Emanuel caused trouble, her blood pressure would rise. Whenever he threw tantrums in her office, stayed out all night, or wasted large amounts of money, she felt weak and overwhelmed. Paul watched helplessly as his wife's health got worse. He had warned her many times that she was spoiling Emanuel, but she never listened. Now, he could see the consequences of her actions right in front of him. She had created a monster, a son who had no respect for anyone, not even his own mother. Despite her failing health, Madam Comfort refused to admit that she had made mistakes. She still saw Emanuel as her precious son, the boy she had prayed for, the one she believed she was protecting. She convinced herself that he would change one day, that he just needed more time. But Paul knew the truth. He saw the pain in her eyes, the tiredness in her body, and the weight of regret that she refused to acknowledge. He wished he could turn back time and make her see things differently, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. One fateful day, Emanuel stormed into his mother's office just like he always did, demanding money. His face was filled with anger, and he spoke in a loud, harsh tone. He had no respect for his mother or the fact that she was at work. Madam Comfort, already feeling weak and stressed, tried to explain to him that she couldn't give him money this time. She told him that the funds had already been set aside for an important school project, something that the students and teachers desperately needed. But Emanuel did not care. He refused to listen. His temper rose quickly. He began shouting, his voice echoing through the hallways of the school. He kicked over chairs, knocked books off the shelves, and slammed his fists on her desk. His eyes were filled with rage as he pointed at his mother, accusing her of choosing the school over him. The noise drew the attention of the staff and even some students. They stood outside the office, whispering in shock. Some teachers shook their heads, while others looked on in fear. They had seen Emanuel misbehave many times before, but today, he was worse than ever. Under immense pressure, Madam Comfort's body could no longer handle the stress. Her chest tightened, and she suddenly gasped for air. A sharp pain spread through her body, and her hands trembled. The school staff quickly carried Madam Comfort to a car and rushed her to the hospital, praying that she would survive. But by the time they arrived, it was too late. The doctors checked her, but there was nothing they could do. Madam Comfort was gone. The woman who had built an empire, the mother who had given everything to her son, had taken her last breath. And in that moment, Emanuel realized the painful truth: his mother had died because of him. As for Paul, his world crumbled before his eyes. Losing his wife was already painful, but what happened next made things even worse. Madam Comfort's siblings, who had never shown much interest in the school before, suddenly appeared. They wasted no time in taking over everything she had left behind. They claimed that because she was their sister, her wealth rightfully belonged to them. Paul had worked hard alongside his wife for many years. Even though he was not as rich as she was, he had been the principal of the school, helping to manage it and ensuring everything ran smoothly. But now, all of that was taken away from him. Madam Comfort's siblings refused to recognize him as the rightful owner of the school. They said that since the school was in their sister's name, he had no claim to it. They changed all the management, brought in their own people, and pushed Paul out completely. One day, he arrived at the school as usual, only to be told that he was no longer welcome. His office had been given to someone else, and all his belongings were packed up and left outside. Paul stood there, staring at the school he had helped build, feeling a deep pain in his heart. The place that had once been his pride, where he had worked with dedication, was no longer his. With no other choice, he had to accept his fate. He left quietly, carrying nothing. This story teaches parents a crucial lesson: excessive pampering and lack of discipline can ruin a child's future. Love should be balanced with guidance, correction, and structure. Parents must treat all their children equally, ensuring that no child feels neglected or overly entitled. Madam Comfort's greatest mistake was prioritizing her son's happiness over his discipline, and in the end, it cost her life. True love involves preparing children for the realities of life, not shielding them from consequences. Parents must remember that wealth cannot replace proper upbringing. A well-raised child is the greatest legacy one can leave behind. Hope you enjoyed the story. Leave your thoughts about the story in the comments section, like the video,